Emily, thank you so much for joining us today for our summit.
I'm so excited to be here, Leslie. It's so fun to have conversations with you.
Yes. So for those who are joining who don't know your background, can you give us a little bit more about what you do, who you are?
Yep, absolutely. So I am by trade a nurse midwife and women's health nurse practitioner. I practiced in traditional medicine for many, many years. And then right in the midst of COVID, as many people made big life transitions, I left conventional medicine and opened an integrative women's health practice that quickly by accident became very focused on perimenopause and menopause and weight loss in midlife, not because that's what I set out to do. In fact, back in 2021, when I started my practice, menopause wasn't getting all the hype that it's getting now, and weight loss wasn't a thing either. GLP-1s weren't really, they were just FDA approved, like for weight loss instead of just being a diabetes med. So I didn't get into it because of any of that. I got into it because I really wanted to do integrative medicine. I loved working with women, but every woman who came into my office was in perimenopause and menopause. And what I found was that the tools that I'd been taught from my functional medicine training were not working because that was such a distinctly male-centric model. That like the gold standard in the Institute for Functional Medicine is that you put someone on an elimination diet and 98% of their problems go away. And I found that people certainly got a little bit better as you improved inflammation and gut health and the like, but that truly women who were hormone deficient were also going to be often in a state of metabolic inflammation, and that those things required different types of interventions. And that's sort of how I got to where I am today, which is I founded a telehealth company called Aurelia Health. And we primarily focus on women ages 35 to 59, supporting them to achieve optimal health during the perimenopause and menopause transitions, and to restore metabolic flexibility and health. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. I always love those stories where it's like you start doing something and then it goes somewhere else because that's what people need and want. That's always great. So getting to weight management, which is kind of our subject for today. Tell us about that. I mean, I know a lot of women feel stuck on a roller coaster, their weight's up, their weight's down. And, you know, there's always like yo-yo dieting and new fads and all of that. But what is different about your approach to sustainable weight loss?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there with regards to most women have a story around weight. They have a history, they have sort of the story that they inherited. And unfortunately, especially in the United States, where we don't really have a lot of like cultural heritage around like food in the way that our European counterparts do. A lot of us grew up on processed, packaged, quick food. And we also grew up as women with mothers who were constantly dieting. Food was either good or bad. And we probably also have a shared experience that at some point in our life, we wanted to lose weight and we were able to do it quickly with restrictive eating and exercising. And that dogma has been propagated by the medical system. I mean, most women still, especially women in midlife who go to their doctor and say, like, I just really need to lose 10 pounds. I'm just not feeling like myself. The advice that they're given is, eat less and exercise more. And my whole work is now founded on undoing that ideology for women and helping them to understand that metabolic inflexibility, resistance to weight loss, basically when your body is in a default state of holding fat, not building muscle, and having resistance essentially to some calorie restriction, meaning that you could go from a 2,200 calorie diet to an 1,800 calorie diet and your weight doesn't change, right? And that is an experience many women have, especially in midlife as hormones are on the decline, that is the result of systemic issues. And we really need to take a system-wide approach, meaning we need to look at nutrient depletion. We need to look at B12 levels, particularly are really important for carbohydrate metabolism. We need to look at anything that's really feeding the mitochondria. We need to look at toxicity. We need to look at hormone levels, thyroid, right? Then the list just goes on. So I don't know if I answered your question.
But yes, no, that's so, I mean, the thought of reducing to 800 calories, no.
Oh, I think I said 1,800, but.
Oh, I'm like, oh my God, it felt like torture, but even 1,800, oof. But yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It's just that simple, like calories in, calories out math doesn't really work anymore at this stage of life. It sounds like is what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, I think to some extent, calorie awareness, macronutrient awareness is of course important. And, most women on a 2,600 calorie diet day they're not going to be losing weight, right? You still do need to be in a state of slight caloric depletion, but way more importantly, and I would rather someone go through one of my programs or work with me or one of my team members and really understand that it's more about quality over quantity, and that it's about fueling and nourishing, and also taking your body out of a state of stress overdrive that are going to give you more bang for your buck in this phase of life. And it's why weight loss seems so elusive for so many women, because these things are just being, neglected. And in fact, many even reputable hospital systems are still prescribing things like, phentermine and stimulant-based weight loss medications to women whose weight loss is very rooted in sympathetic overdrive and in nervous system imbalance. And like we're this again is reflective of the fact that we don't have a female-focused approach to healthcare, because we didn't even really start doing research on women until the last 50 years. Because they were too unstable, they were too labile, they cycled, their hormones changed, too many confounders, and it's like, well, but we are half the population, so it is important. And I think if we had a female-focused model of medicine, this kind of stuff would have been teased out much earlier on in the game, but we really don't. So unfortunately, it behooves women to partner with a clinician if they're intending to lose weight, especially if they want sustainable weight loss, and if they don't want to feel like garbage when they're losing weight. Like our goal in my practice, we say we take a no diet approach to weight loss, meaning we don't want people to feel deprivation. And if you really focus on quality macronutrients, getting sufficient protein, a small amount of healthy fat, and micronutrients, if those micronutrient needs are met, people shouldn't actually feel deprived when they're losing weight. And this works for many, many people. And then I would say that there's some people who are sort of, they are metabolically stuck in a pattern of holding onto fat, body fat in particular, despite even optimizing all of these other areas. Similar in the way that, like, if you're a yogi, there's this term that I always liken to this kind of fat loss pattern or fat loss resistance, which is called, like in yoga, we always say samskaras, that when you have these psychological sort of like, they're like grooves in the consciousness. And you know how like you might get stuck in the way that you think about something, the way that you have a scarcity mindset or whatever. They call that in yoga that you have these samskaras, which is a very visual, like I imagine like thumbprints in the brain. And the physiology will do the same thing. So if you're a person that's had a lot of cyclical dieting, you've had periods of time where you've put in a lot of restriction, if for years you were not eating until 1 p.m. and you were not doing any stress reduction practices, your body may be in a place where it's slowing down the thyroid, where it's naturally keeping blood sugar levels high because you've been in a state of high stress and you've been in a state of restriction. And that's a process called gluconeogenesis, by which the liver, which stores about 100 grams of glucose at any given time, the liver can kind of drip out glucose. So you might be fasting, but the liver is like, oh no, Leslie Gone, like she's going to run from a bear any minute now, because I know that she's always like in stress overdrive. I'm just going to keep her glucose at like a steady 105 because I want her to be prepared to respond to emergency. And so the liver does this. And a lot of women that we see that, have a high stress lifestyle, have had a history of cyclical dieting, and most people would say that they fit into that category. Most women do, unfortunately. And in those cases, even if we do all of the things that we know how to do, sometimes those women, these are the women whose blood sugar will spike just from eating a bowl of Brussels sprouts. Like they are so sensitive to carbohydrates. Their system is so wired to keep glucose high that they really benefit from the use of a more pharmacologic intervention. And that's really how I started to use GLP-1s in my practice. We often don't need to use dosing as high as the, sort of FDA approved formulations, the commercial products that are on the market, which would be Wegovy and Mounjaro or Zepbound, which is tirzepatide, so that'd be the GLP plus GIP, so combined two types of peptides. And so we do use some FDA-approved formulations for certain patients, but we often use compounded formulations so that we can use smaller doses, because sometimes all it takes is a little bit to kind of start to unwind some of those patterns in the body.
So interesting. I'm glad you brought up GLP-1. That is such a buzz. I don't know if you call it a word or what it is, acronym these days. So it sounds like you do use it in your practice. So I know there's a lot of pros, cons, risks, considerations, but talk a little bit more about it. Like, when do you think it actually makes sense and what should people be aware of?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think right out of the gate, you know, I'm a person that's always trying to get people off of pharmaceuticals in my practice. And yet I think some things are just game changers and they're amazing. And I also think we have such technological advance in so many areas. We have NASA, we have SpaceX, we have electric cars that self-drive. Like we have so much intervention and, you know, ingenuity in other areas. And yet in women's health, like, why haven't we been able to crack this? There are very like safe, you know, smart interventions that we can do to kind of hack people's physiology. And I think GLP-1s have proven themselves to absolutely be some of the best advancement that we've made in terms of like health in the last 10 years. So a lot of people are afraid of GLP-1s, and there's a lot of noise out there on the internet, a lot of influencers that will talk about, you know, the horrible side effects. You know, if you're dosing in a traditional way, like the commercial product recommends, and you're not doing any lifestyle modification, you're not optimizing digestion, you're not reducing inflammation, you're not helping people eat a whole food diet, right? You're not dealing with the root causes of weight gain, then you can absolutely have terrible heartburn, nausea, vomiting, fatigue, because essentially you're dramatically lowering glucose when you introduce these medications, especially in traditional dosing schedules. And if you're a person that's been, you know, living in the 110, 120 glucose range as your resting baseline glucose, which is much higher than optimal, which would be like, you know, 80s and 90s, you're going to feel tired, right? Especially if your body's inflamed and you're undernourished. And so you've got all these people who are undernourished with underactive thyroids, and putting them on this medication, they're going to have terrible side effects. You know, there was a woman floating around the internet a few months ago who had osteoporosis like in her 20s from being on GLPs. And to me, that's just like lazy medicine. There's no reason that should happen. These medications don't categorically make you lose muscle any more than just regular old weight loss can have you losing muscle. Like regular old weight loss will have you lose muscle and fat, and so will weight loss on a GLP-1. So I think it's a great intervention when it's done in combination with lifestyle. And it's one of the reasons why, despite the accessibility and the ease of kind of growing a medical practice, prescribing these medications, I refuse to prescribe them outside of like a very deep care relationship. And we require all of our patients on them to do really high touch dietitian support for 6 months. Wow. In our practice. Yeah. So like they're not getting off with just like having this easy intervention. It is making their journey easier. It is reducing inflammation. We see that inflammatory markers like high sensitivity C-reactive protein, you know, ANA, anti-nuclear antibodies, so autoimmune markers will go down. They will plummet within weeks of starting GLP-1 therapy. We don't fully understand why this is the case, but we know it's a peptide that's modulating a lot of different things in the body. We use it in microdoses for people that don't need to lose weight, but that have autoimmune conditions or pain-based conditions like endometriosis. And a lot of these things are just sort of starting to be explored in the literature. So I think it has a lot of potential. It has a lot of benefit, but just like anything, like as much as we would love for things to be one-trick ponies and for us to not have to do any hard work, it has to be part of a comprehensive plan. And in my situation, the way that I've set up my practice is really just that I think that what women have is not a deficit of willpower. I think that what they have is like a deficit of care, that we've become so transactional. And then everyone also thinks that like each new heavily branded, you know, supplement on the market with like beautiful whatever is going to solve all their problems. And they want everything to be, a fix, but there's actually no relationships and like there's no transformation support, right? I'm sure as you've built your business and if I built my business, I haven't done it alone, right? I've reached out to people for help. I've learned, I've been coachable. We need to have that same level of support in our health journeys. And so I feel really good about using these medications, but that's because they're in the context of a practice that's very heavy-handed with support and, motivational interviewing and like really measurable goal setting and love, ultimately like there's got to be love in the equation because we have to help women feel safe in their bodies, and feel like this is something that they're utilizing as a tool so that they can, reset their physiology, kind of hack their physiology, but also like actually move forward so that their new baseline is different from where they started and that they have something sustainable that's going to promote like long-term health. Because ultimately all I want for myself, for you, for any woman that I work with is that like we are around, I know we both have 4 kids, which is so fun, that we're around like for all those grandchildren and like we're not just sort of frail little grandmothers, that they're like really active, like, we have these amazing lives that we get to live. And that we all know that like health is the most important resource. We can't do any of that living if we don't have our health, right? So, yeah.
I totally agree. I know I'm also very passionate about this. I can tell you are too. And it's funny what you said is like, everybody wants that shortcut, but whether it's in business or health or anything, if something seems like this, like super easy shortcut where you're going to get all the success without the work, it's just not how it goes. And we can all do things to make things easier, but you get out what you put in. And so like, anything that sounds like a super easy, quick fix shortcut is probably, it's not, there's a catch, right? So I completely agree with all that. Mm-hmm. And on that note, I know you mentioned nutrition earlier, quality versus quantity, and especially with GLP-1, where you're like eating less, you have to be even more aware of what you're putting in, or you can end up with other problems like you were talking about. So talk a little bit more about that, because I think everyone's mind kind of goes to nutrition as when they think about weight management. So mm-hmm. What's like your principle that you use to recommend nutritional strategies, whether you're on GLP-1 or not?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you have other guests talking about this, but for sure protein is our first goal, especially for women, after a certain age, depending on, when hormone decline begins for you, we're really losing muscle mass. If we change nothing and we eat the same, we do we lose muscle mass every single year. So taking in protein and then using our muscles, right? And continuing to build muscle mass, because you can build muscle mass as you age if you're intentional about it. So, we like to say, you hear people say 100 grams of protein, and that's going to really vary depending on the person. I'm 5'9", I have much higher protein needs. But protein also, like, it helps your brain, it helps your mood, it helps your cognition, and it helps with fullness. And then the next thing that we look to for women that we coach women on is fiber. I think people talk about vegetables, they talk about fruits, but like, if you really contextualize it for women, and that like, if you're getting 35 grams of fiber a day, it's very hard to not feel full. And it's also like really hard to have high cholesterol when you're getting that much fiber. So we really just help women track. If I have people track versus calories, I'm having them track protein and fiber. And generally, if they can meet those protein and fiber targets, the protein is going to be anywhere from like 90, maybe for a really small person, to like 140 grams of protein a day, plus 30 to 35 grams of fiber. It's pretty unlikely that they have a lot more work to do. Like if they can accomplish those 2 things, so like you're going to track and you get an app, track those 2 things, and you're going to be doing really well. Obviously, you want to also be drinking lots of water if you're eating that much fiber and protein. And you want to like get lots of colors, and we can get like, fancy about our recommendations after that, but that's a good place to start for people. And then, you can get into, for some people, depending on your archetype, depending on if you have autoimmune disease or inflammation, it's helpful to remove certain inflammatory foods. We try to really focus on just high quality in general, like staying away from seed oils, using high quality extra virgin olive oil, just lots of plants, lots of good sources of animal protein. I think it can be very challenging for women in this phase of life who are vegetarians and vegans, just because in order to get all of the amino acid needs that you have met and the protein needs, you have to have a huge caloric expense account, right? You really have to to get protein out of chickpeas that you would get out of chicken, you're consuming a lot more carbs and calories in that way. So It's challenging for women, especially in midlife. We can maybe get away with it earlier, but there's a way to do a kind of nice combination of like a very plant forward, almost like vegan approach that's paleo, where you're still getting animal sources and you're meeting all of your amino acid needs, especially leucine. Like you can't get leucine from plant protein. So you really need animal protein to make that. And that's really important for muscle synthesis. So
No, I totally agree. I'm so glad you just said protein and fiber. And it's funny because we do overcomplicate things, but to your point, if you're getting enough protein and fiber, it kind of, the rest kind of falls into
It's hard to be doing it wrong if you got
because there's only so much room for junky stuff or whatever else.
No, and I like to keep things simple. Like I don't want a lot of complication in my food. I need something that's like, I just need to kind of know what's easy. And so if I know that I make a smoothie that's going to fulfill 10 grams of my fiber needs and 40 grams of my protein needs in the morning. And then I only have to like go on from there. And then if I have, X amount of ounces of animal protein at lunch and dinner, I'm like, good. Right. And if I eat a salad with every meal and I add some fiber forward things like chia seeds or, hemp seeds or flax seeds, to my food, then I'm like, I'm really moving in the right direction. So, we have full lives. Like it would be lovely if we all lived in Tuscany and like just slow cooked our way through life. And like, that is a goal. That is the goal. But like right now, I can't do that. Right. So it's got to be quick and dirty. And I'm just trying to eat for longevity and eat for ease and simplicity. And I imagine that a lot of the audience needs that as well.
Totally. That's totally my philosophy with vitamins as well. Is like, yes, if I could eat all the fruits and vegetables, 25 vegetables, plant-based foods a day and juice everything, that's ideal. But in the meantime, I need some easier solutions.
Facts.
And fiber, we actually for the summit wrote a fiber guide, and vitamin E has 5 grams in our little shot. But it is one of those things, the more you learn about fiber, what it does for you, it's really amazing. And protein too, that's on my list. We need a protein shot.
Totally. I mean, and it's wild when I go like to the airport, I'm traveling tomorrow. Like it astounds me how impossible it is to get protein is one thing, but fiber sources is like, it's almost impossible. So any way that you can hack that by doing a fiber shot, I like sun fiber, like there's lots of ways that you can kind of, it's not that you shouldn't get all your protein needs from that, but like you can get a good 20-25% from these little like easy workarounds that will provide so much give
Love
back
that.
to you.
Love all the help to get to those goals. So tell us about some of the misconceptions that you see with your clients, or things like myths or anything that you kind of would flag as like, this is not the case.
Yeah, well, if I'm being really controversial, because I think we've talked about, the reason why GLPs in general get a bad rep, and why, even the commercial drugs people, are kind of in an uproar about. But right now, I think that there's a lot of attention and witch hunting regarding compounding medication. This is in the HRT space, so compounded hormones, but also in the compounded GLP-1 space. And, the FDA has recently basically banned the production of sort of what they call look-alike medications, but meaning that, for semaglutide, which is the generic name for Ozempic and Wegovy, or for tirzepatide, which is the generic name for Mounjaro or Zepbound, that compounders are not allowed to make them. And that those fears are largely unfounded. Like we live in a society where there are hundreds of thousands of people dying every year due to medication error.
Wow.
This is hundreds of thousands. It's one of the leading causes of death in America is medication error, pharmaceutical error. This is polypharmacy. This is errors made in hospitals. These are people who are primarily going down the traditional medicine pathway where they're on multiple medications, they have medication interactions, or they're just taking dangerous meds, right? That like put you at risk. These GLP-1s should not go into that bucket, right? I mean, there have been just as many adverse events, if not more, from the commercial products as there are with compounded products. Compounded medications are not inherently bad or dangerous. And I think that there is a cohort of people who, I wouldn't go so far as to say that they are in the pockets of pharmaceutical companies, but they have been kind of fed this misinformation really, that like anything outside of a commercial drug is unsafe. And it's really just unfounded. Like we actually don't have the data to back that up. And I think some of the beautiful things about compounded medication is that you can really customize and personalize an approach. You can microdose, which you cannot do if you're using a commercial product. And I mean, there's also the financial accessibility piece that, you know, these drugs are still under patent for several more years. And so they're extremely cost prohibitive for many people. And so if you, Leslie, say had like, you were starting to show autoimmune markers, or like there was something going on that I thought you could benefit from a low dose GLP-1, I would like to be able to prescribe that for you in an accessible way where I can really customize it. So I would say that like the propagation of fear around compounded weight loss medications, compounded hormones is really unfounded. And granted, you want to, again, always partner with a provider who you trust, who makes you feel safe and secure, and who you trust has done their own research. Like we work really hard to really know our compounders, right? But they are like a part of our team, right? They really, again, individualize and personalize the practice of medicine, which I think for whatever reason, we could have a whole other conversation about this, but like we have just gotten away from that art of medicine, that personalized approach, the like, I know you, I know your kids' names, I know what makes you tick kind of medical practice. And the witch hunting around compounders, I think kind of falls into that bucket.
Thank you. No, that's helpful. I do think there's a lot of, it's polarizing. There's a lot of opinions out there. So thanks for weighing in on that. And I know you mentioned yoga earlier in this conversation, but how do you blend Eastern and Western medicine in your practice? And how do you see that fitting into the weight loss journey?
Yeah, such a good question. I think that, nervous system has gotten such attention in recent years in the health space in a way that it never did before. And I think in Eastern disciplines, this is where we sort of talk about energy, right? And how we're managing energy. Is the energy managing us, or are we managing the energy? And, even though in my practice, we're not prescribing Chinese herbs per se, and we're not measuring pulse in the same way that like a Chinese medicine practitioner would, I think that the attention to the nervous system and sort of the way that we're managing our energy, like if you're feeling cold all the time, is that a thyroid issue, or is that, the fact that you're kind of burning off a lot all day long in terms of stress, and so you're just in sort of a depletion state? Like I think that those approaches have so informed sort of modern day integrative practitioners in a way that make us just look at a person as a whole person in regards to that it's not just the content of your food, but it's like how it's prepared. Like, are you the type of person who should be eating more raw foods, or is your digestive, actual digestive pancreatic enzyme secretion low, and maybe you need more cooked foods, right? Because you don't have the resilience to break all that stuff down. So I think it's really lovely, like how a modern practitioner, I think, should be kind of drawing from what has worked in all these disciplines. And for me, I'd like to make it make sense with science, but it also should make sense kind of spiritually. Like, does that feel like in alignment, and does that resonate? And I would say that most women that come to us, they are looking for an experience that has more depth than what they're typically getting. They're looking to be seen as a whole emotional, physical, spiritual person, and have a plan that really feels in alignment and that resonates and that like actually feels like nourishment. So if you're really depleted and you're so stressed and you're bloated all the time, and I say, well, like, we're going to meet your macronutrient needs by having you eat like salads twice a day and, doing this cold smoothie in the morning, like that isn't going to feel good. Right. And you're going to even look at that bowl of salad and go like, I can't eat this. Like, I just don't have the energy to. So in that way, I think that like my team has done a really good job of like, we're very open to all the things that are out there. And again, like really pulling from all the knowledge and expertise and saying like, how can we kind of help this inform our practice?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because we do live we're like mind, body, like that is what humans are. So there's like, I think people are becoming more aware that you can't just like pull off the physical part or pull off, it's all connected to each other. And also what I love about what you said, I completely agree, is you kind of know what your body needs. Your body is telling you what it needs. You know the answer. You know what it takes to be healthy, because our bodies are trying to be healthy. And so kind of tapping into that, it shouldn't feel like punishment or like fighting against yourself.
Totally. And one of the things that we hear so much from people who are like, oh, I want to do the program with you, but they're like, but I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm just not doing it. So we do this thing as women where we like take all the fault on ourselves, and we're like, it's just a problem with my willpower. And I would always 100% refute that for women. I would say that it's not that you're not being strong enough, because I see women that run multi-million-dollar companies and yet they can't lose weight. Is that a problem of willpower? Are they not strong enough as a person? No, that's a problem of, again, a trust and care relationship and of targeted precision medicine. You actually, maybe you don't just need to restrict your calories. Maybe you need a plan that's actually right for your physiology and your cellular biology in order for it to be effective, right? We blame ourselves for all the ways that we feel. I don't feel motivated. I feel tired. I feel X. And then we say it's because I'm lazy, or I'm not working out enough, or I'm too stressed. And it's well, maybe you're having all these experiences because you've had massive hormonal shifts, and you just need someone to take some of the responsibility off of this for you and give you a plan that doesn't feel hard. That is actually possible,
Yeah, totally. I love that. Well, thank you so much. I think you had so many refreshing different perspectives to add. And I think your philosophy is very aligned with what we think here at Vitamin E. So we're always happy to have you on. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about your practice or you, or just get in touch?
Yeah, thank you so much. So you can follow me on Instagram, Emily Sadri _NP. It stands for nurse practitioner. Then you can find my clinical practice, Aurelia, AURELIA health.com. Or my personal website, which is emilysadri.com, and they both feed back and forth to each other. So we'd love to have you hang out. I have a newsletter I publish every week talking about all of these things, and just, love to give away information for free and help women be better advocates. I think that ultimately we all just really need to be our own best primary care providers. And then we recruit the people that we need on our team. We're all the CEO of our own health. And so I don't ever aim in a care relationship with someone to be like, I'm in charge and this is what you're going to do. I aim to be in service and say, what are your goals? What do you need? And how can we serve you? And so if that's your one takeaway from today, then you got the whole picture.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leslie.